Welcome to the PFS Network podcast. My name is Mitch, and I'll be your host for an important new series where we speak to patients, families, and clinicians about the devastating impact that post-finasteride syndrome has had on many lives. Today, we'll be speaking to 4 patients who've been living with PFS: Damon, Ryan, Luis, and Raf. They've all told their stories previously on our patient video stories series, but today I'm going to be asking them a series of questions about PFS and how it's affected their lives. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
So, wanted to start with first topic. All spoke about it in different ways in your stories originally, but I think it'd be good to get, just what is the most difficult thing that you've found that, this condition has changed in your life. So I might start with you, Raf.
Well, to me, it's really enjoying my life. I mean, every day I'm just kind of carry on as it's almost like a zombie-like shell and just kind of trying to remember how I behaved there in that situation before PFS, just to look normal. The first few months were very difficult when I was hit with depression like every day, but then when that part subsided, I still have this kind of lack of emotions, lack of energy, anything, and physically I can feel that physically I'm getting worse and worse. It's scary, but at the same time, because I haven't got really those emotions which I used to have, I just don't feel that I'm scared. It's all blunted, and good or bad, everything is blunted. It's all kind of one line. So yeah, doing my best.
Something you hear from a lot of PFS patients is like the kind of, that zest for life that, you used to have before this, and just...
Yeah, it's all lost. It's all lost. It just doesn't exist. It just doesn't go through my brain, through my blood. Yeah, so it's quite strange.
Luis, what about for you?
In my personal experience is quite similar to what Raf mentioned. It's like you have emotional flatness all the time. What you used to be happy about doesn't motivate you to do anything anymore. At the beginning, it was just a depression, but this has come to stay with me probably forever. And one of the most difficult things for me is to accept that you might get a little bit better, but you are never going to be your previous yourself. All the how you perceive things around you is completely different. It's like if something has switched off in your brain and you are not able to feel the emotions the same way. Or of course, in sexual terms, which is the most common symptom that comes to the mind of everyone at the beginning, not necessarily the most serious. Um, I don't feel attracted to women I see on the streets anymore. And this is a silly example, but it's applicable to everything in life. You don't feel motivation. You don't feel impulse to do things. So for me at the beginning, the most challenging things was to understand what was happening to me because it was very scary. I had lots of symptoms that I was not able to understand. And if I were going to be able to work again, because I was unemployed for 1 year because I wasn't able to read, unable to concentrate, to do simple things as standing up and going to the kitchen to take something from the fridge, that was very difficult. And it's strange for someone that has not feel it. If someone is hearing me that don't know what this disease is about, it's very hard to understand if you're not feeling it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's like that.
absolutely. I understand. I completely understand what you're saying about it first happens to you and there's like so much has changed, shifted overnight. It's very difficult to understand if you haven't lived through it. Damon, what about for you? I know you were pretty active before this all happened.
Raph and Louise has some good points. Yeah, I was pretty active. I mean, my favorite thing to do prior to all of this was to, lift weights and be active. And I did a little bit of boxing and some jujitsu and stuff. And that's what I enjoyed really, like other than school and studying. But I don't know. The essentially what it comes down to, you're forced to kind of reinvent yourself overnight. Um, because I mean, if you have a reaction like we did, essentially, I mean, anything about you is up in the air to
Mm.
change. And I mean, to kind of run over it. Yeah, I mean, all my skin changed, my muscles changed. I can't build muscle anymore. If I work out, if I just go for a light workout and lift weights lightly, or jump rope, or go for a jog, I'm completely screwed up the rest of the day. I feel like I have like the flu for the rest of the
Mm.
day. I'm nauseous. Sometimes I'm throwing up. Um, yeah, I mean, I still can't read really. It kind of coincides with a lot of the comments I get on my video. People ask me, how am I doing? And, what's gotten better? And unfortunately, nothing has gotten better. So my symptoms themselves have not gotten better. Some have gotten worse. My ability to navigate it has probably gotten better due to just being in it for so long. It's like my new normal, if that makes sense. I feel like a robot. It's all very mechanical. And so, like, when I'm talking to somebody or listening to somebody talk, I have to imagine how I would react to it before, right? Because I took it at 23. I'm 27 now, and I just kind of have to go by those 22 years that I do
Mm.
remember, or those 20 plus years of like navigating it normally and what my normal is, and that's kind of what I have to refer to. Um, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's very apparent to other people. Unfortunately, it's not just apparent to me. I mean, I have comments about it, but it's not like I'm always like in the slumps. Like, man, I wish I didn't have PFS. Like some of this is just you try to move forward at a certain point, but when it's affected every fiber of your being, what can you do?
Yeah. It's tough. Ryan, what about you?
Well, I agree to everything that the guys have just said there. I mean, prior to taking finasteride, I had no history of anything that has developed over the course of the time since I took it and stopped. It's become a bit of an isolated existence. Um, I know that I've chose to step away as well because it's too difficult emotionally to go through this when you're not connected to the world anymore. What's particularly difficult for me is when I hug my son and I tell him I love him, and I'm trying to imagine how that would feel because I don't feel that anymore. It's just, it's absolutely horrific, really. So I spend my life acting how I would have once behaved, and this has been ongoing for quite a number of years for me. And and the other thing that's now catching up with the cognitive sides is the physical sides for me as the destruction plays out in my masculinity, my muscles, my organ function. It's across the board. There's nothing sacred, and there's nothing that in some is left untouched. So it's just a gradual decline for me after the initial crash, and I've had a few of those. And then when people say they're here for you and they want to hear, but when you talk about it, I actually can't get away quick enough, and I do know that's quite common for sufferers because of the lack of awareness and knowledge. People um, can't can't really
Mm.
understand the topic, and it's actually the same in the medical field. So you see all these doctors and consultants, um, and you can just see it in their eyes that they don't want to hear it, and they try and compartmentalize it into different other conditions, which it never is, and it's never associated once they've done the checks anyway. So we're relatively left swimming in open water,
Mm.
trying to survive
Absolutely. How
this condition.
you've all spoken to people, your friends, family about, what's going on. You've, spoken publicly about this. How difficult is it? I know it's really difficult for me to try and explain it to people. Like, exactly, I remember my sister-in-law, asking me, because, I said to her, I was like, I know that I love my niece and my nephew, but like I don't feel love anymore. And she was like, she couldn't understand that. She's like, oh, but if you love them, like, why don't you feel love? It's like a really difficult thing to explain to people, some of this like blunting that you spoke about, Raf.
Yeah, I mean, my relatives, most of them just don't understand what's happening, really. I mean, if I were them, I think I would probably think the same, because it's just so unbelievable that it's, unless you really feel yourself, you can't
Mm.
really explain that. And it's just so unreal and it's so inhuman that it's just like, I don't know of any medicine or anything like which can actually have the same effect. It's almost like sci-fi, so it's
Mm.
so yeah, it's a very unreal situation. And that's my opinion.
Um, so
Yeah.
in terms of like something that you said, Luis, so initially when this all first happens, is that something that everyone sort of experienced? It's pretty like terrifying when it all first begins, when you don't really understand what's changing in you so dramatically, so quickly.
I was going to say, because you have domains of strength normally that you rely on in different situations, and it just hits like a wave, and those levels of resilience you have are just aren't there anymore, because it just hits you. It's like a bomb going off in the crash status, which can last from days, weeks, months, and you have nowhere to go, and because it's not understood, there's no help, there's no cavalry coming for you, so you're left in this terrifying situation, trying to make sense of what's happening to you. I was one of the early users when when there wasn't many guys affected, so I was just left in this horrifying situation where I actually thought I was losing my mind. But once the physical decline started happening, then I knew it wasn't all in my mind. And because there isn't any medical science backing it up, and it certainly wasn't then, um, people don't believe that you're saying something's happened and something's causing all these problems. It's a very, very difficult,
Mm.
isolating
Yeah.
situation.
So Ryan, you were just talking about it's very hard to have anyone kind of accept that this is happening to you clinically. I think it's
Yeah,
talking to patients and their families on this series. That's a reoccurring theme.
That's what really makes me unhappy that if, for example, somebody has a cancer, yeah, and they know it's cancer and they can't do anything, but at least they know it's cancer.
yeah,
But in our condition, they just don't believe us. And I always consider, like, after this experience, that the medicine really on still like that kind of level of previous centuries. So it's really medieval kind of medicine. And I know they've got like
Mm.
new technologies, whatever, but I just don't see any use or any help. Or and the doctors, like, I had the same experience when I went to GP and I started complaining that I had strong tinnitus, etc., 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 etc. And then he said, "Hmm, let me just take some book." And he took a book and he was kind of reading, "Finasteride causing depression and impotence." Okay. And he started looking in my
Mm.
ear. I mean, what can he see in my ear? It's a all that tinnitus comes from the this hormonal disbalance, whatever. I mean, I would have better probably like going to doctor some like in 15th century and telling him
Mm.
about my problem. It's
Yeah.
just exactly the same
Yeah.
experience. It's just unbelievable.
Damon, what about for you?
I've had, over the past 2.5 years, I've had lots of blood work taken. I've seen many doctors. I've seen neurologists, family practitioners, endocrinologists, neuroendocrinologist, one who specifically, supposedly treats guys with this condition, and I haven't had any luck. I know very few people in this community who have had luck seeing clinicians. The first barrier to get through is they simply don't know what finasteride is. So you have this medication that's widely taken.
yeah,
It's the only medication for hair loss, prescribed for hair loss. It's used for BPH. And most clinicians have no idea what it is.
Mm.
Um, and the people who do have an idea what it is. They have no idea what post-finasteride syndrome is. And so, well, anyway, there's a lot of hurdles to get through, and eventually, after spending a lot of money getting a lot of tests, they basically tell you there's nothing they can do about it. So, a lot of our hormone panels, once our endocrine system crashes, look like total trash. Like you can see low values in us, but after not a certain amount of time, I mean those values come back to normal. They don't
Mm,
stay trash forever. I had really bad values with a lot of things: thyroid, testosterone, DHT, but you know, it all a lot of it comes back to normal. My lab values, for the most part, are okay, aside from some things like cortisol and but yeah, nothing else has come back to normal. And
yeah.
so I'm still kind of in 2.5 years later. I'm still in limbo, trying to decide what do I take. Do I inject testosterone blindly? Do I? You don't really know what to do. So
Mm. So, do you have like one story that sticks out, or they all just kind of meld together for you in terms of bad clinical experiences?
yeah, well, the probably worst. Yeah, I mean the most blatant. Um, I went to see. I had a comprehensive eye exam from an ophthalmologist. They checked my optic nerve. They checked. They blew up a picture of my eye behind my iris and pupil, and I mean the integrity. He described it like seeing, like a 23-year-old's eye should be, like a new car. It was
Mm,
shiny. It was good. There was no signs of degeneration. At this point, I could not see anything. Like my vision was completely blurry. Um, but I went to see a neurologist after that. I'd been dealing with it probably 6 to 8 months at this point. And he did a quick neuro screen. He looked at my feet and had me walk. But and I remember specifically, I brought him studies with me because
mm,
I'd already been through the ringer at that point. And I brought him about 4 studies showing finasteride's effects on neurosteroids and crossing the blood-brain barrier and all that. And he didn't even look at them. I mean, this guy, he's a neurologist, board certified MD. He didn't even look at the studies I had in my hand. He was like, "Yeah, no, I recall what finasteride is, but the studies that you're referring to." He was like, "Good
mm.
job on the studies there, but that's probably more long term use." And after that, he just completely dismissed it, and he gave me like an antidepressant and with triptyline, which is like a headache migraine medicine.
Mm.
Yeah, and that was it.
That's terrible. Yeah.
So you're on your own. If you To summarize it, if you have PFS, you're on your own. Simple as that.
That's well said,
Luis,
Damon.
what
It
about
is,
what about
but
for
it's
you?
true.
Yeah, sadly, I have to agree with most of what you guys said. Touching on what Damon said, my vision of medicine has changed a lot over the last year. Before all this stuff, I was like, okay, do whatever your doctor say because he's the one knowing. And I think most of the population thinks like that.
Mm,
But I came to realize that doctors don't really know what they are prescribing. Uh, they are they just give you drugs that they somebody tells them, okay, this is for this is to cure this, but they don't really know how the mechanisms of action of the medicines they are giving you, most of them,
mm,
and that's very concerning. Of course, I have visited many doctors internationally over the last year and a half. Most of my experiences have been similar to yours. Some of them just wanted to get your money, saying that they treat post-finasteride syndrome and they have experience lying and they have no idea of what's happening. Well, to be honest, no doctor has idea of what's happening, but I mean, just making it as a business to get the most of desperate patients, as such. And in terms of, I also have to say I have found the opposite. I had one doctor, for example, who had experience on this and agreed to treat me, to look at me and all that without charging me anything because he knew I
Wow.
was unemployed at that time. And he said, please come to visit me and we will look at this. But in terms of bad experiences, I have many, but one of them stands out. I went to an urologist like 4 months ago, approximately. I had an echo Doppler done on the penis to see if there was fibrosis or venous leakage, some kind of damage in the penis, and there were, obviously. And I went to the consultation with this doctor from the social security system, this urologist. I gave him all the studies for post-finasteride syndrome. Please read at this if you don't know about the condition. He didn't want to look at them, as Damon said, and he began to mock the condition, to suggest that if I knew other patients, it was because we were some kind of social club and laughing at it. I was very angry, and he refused to read all the literature, and at the end he didn't give me any solution. He refused nothing linked to finasteride,
Wow.
and I went out crying from that consultation.
Yeah. For someone to sit
It
there and
was,
like not only deny you but like mock you is
yeah,
that's incredibly unprofessional. It's not only it's not only like poor practice, it's just like it's not very good empathy or just being a human being in general. It's terrible.
yeah. I have the opposite case as well. My GP in Spain, he didn't know anything about finasteride side effects. He told me he had never seen it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I gave him all the studies, and even on the coronavirus crisis in the middle of the pandemic, when doctors were not seeing patients in person, he told me to go to the clinic because he wanted to talk to me for 45 minutes about the condition, how it was affecting me.
Wow.
So he couldn't help me at all, but it made a massive difference to know that your doctor at least believes you.
Right. It makes such a difference. Like when I first found a
Definitely.
urologist who tried to treat me, who accepted that this was a possibility. I remember him like going through and you know looking for information about finasteride while we were talking, and he remembered this conference that he'd been to where someone was speaking about this was a possibility, and he was like, tried to treat me. There wasn't anything he could do, but he just like showed a level of care, and it like makes a difference. It gives you a bit of faith in the healthcare system again, because I think for me that's been like Raf said, like you said, Lewis. It's um, if a doctor used to tell me to do something, I just did it. I just took it as like gospel. I mean, yeah, for me, I've been told that I have a delusional disorder. Um, and that was like in the very early days, and that was pretty heartbreaking. Like I remember leaving, and this point like I'm suicidal every day, and you know nothing else changed in my life. Like to be told that I was delusional because I said, well, I found out about this through this online forum, and then they went and looked. They were like looking at Propecia Help as I was talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, it looks like this is all in your head, and you're a young man. There's no way this could be happening. Just go home, relax." And it's just like I don't know how to relax at this point. Like I can't relax. It's physically impossible. Yeah, and that was pretty devastating. So
Yeah, but I can imagine in that status of mind when you are having suicidal thoughts, that consultation can make a huge
right,
difference for you.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem for us is that there's no biomarkers for cancer, for virtually every condition that's treatable. It shows up in blood work or the symptomatic things that they can see that can determine the condition. But for this, it's not understood. So, and because there's no markers for it, um, this is part of the reason why we're in this situation. Um, but empathetic doctors are few and far between. But when you come across one, even though they can't treat us, it makes such a difference.
yeah. Absolutely. So I want to talk about like your experiences speaking publicly because this is a very stigmatizing problem as we've just touched on through the whole clinical experience. How difficult was that one? And then what's the experience been like afterwards? How did your friends and family react? What's kind of changed in your life since you've spoken publicly about what's going on? Maybe Damon, I know your videos had quite a lot of views, and I know it seemed like it was tough for everyone to do, but maybe we'll start with yours.
Yeah, it was extremely hard to record it and to, kind of make the decision to record it. I recorded that video, I tried probably over 10 times to record that video because I just wasn't in a good spot when I recorded it. Your guideline and the just kind of a blueprint of a mental track to follow really helped. But my main fear when I put it up, I'm like, man, my classmates are going to see this. Potentially my professors are going to see this. It wasn't the case. Nobody I know has seen it unless I've showed it to them. They're not going to come across it. It's very unlikely that they would come across it.
Mm,
Most people, like I said, don't know what finasteride even
mm,
is. Most people don't know, much less post-finasteride syndrome. Much less finding your video on YouTube. I mean, the odds of that are just insane. Unless you show them the video, they're not going to see it, most likely. And even if they did, it's nothing to be ashamed about.
mm,
It's a stigmatized condition. I mean, a lot of people think it's psychosomatic, but it's not. And the reason the information and the stigma hasn't changed is because a lot of people haven't spoken about it, and the research and stuff in there. But some family that I've told about it, and it hadn't been a good response. I've lost some friends, some family, but this thing has been with me for a while. It doesn't show signs of slowing. But ultimately, no. I encourage anybody with the same issue going on to at least put something out for viewership and exposure.
yeah. What about the rest of you guys, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I did the video last year, but I found out the source of my problems after a long time, approximately 4 years ago. Actually, I was telling people there's a way of excusing any sort of social shortcomings that this disease had brought. Um, and then often people will be quite receptive to it once you've told them about it once. But then moving forward, I found that people moved away from me because they aren't getting any scripts around how to deal with someone with this condition. People that are in your life didn't
Mm,
buy into this. It wasn't part of the deal when you became friends or whatever. So people have moved away. But I'm still glad I have told people. My marriage was suffering terribly because of sort of my emotional state and the changes in me physically and not wanting to be a man with my wife, so to speak. Um, but once the closest people to me understood it, for instance, my sisters, my wife, um, they have been so supportive, but even some of my relatives have disappeared, even though they say they hear from me. And I think it's just because they can't deal with the subject, and it's the same for my friends. So the easiest thing to do, or the best thing that they can do from their perspective, is to not to engage with it. Um, but
mm,
I do tell people, I, I just think it's the right thing to do because we won't have awareness and we'll just be further pushed down the corridor into a dark room unless we do speak openly about it. Given the choice, I'm glad that I have done it and I will do it again. Sometimes maybe I do explain it in an emotional state, as I'm sure all of you can relate to,
mm.
and I think that can be a little bit of an undoing as well. But anyway, my nearest and dearest have stood by me which is reassuring.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Luis?
In my case, I find more difficult than making the video to tell someone face to face and explain them everything step by step, because it is a very long process if you really want to make them understand what's happening. And I was very afraid initially of the reaction of people, what they would think about what was happening to me, if they would believe that I was getting crazy, or if they would be understanding. I have not told all my family, just part of it, and some close friends. And in general, people has been very receptive. So for them, obviously, they are going to understand you, they will support you, and all that. But it's not that intense as it is for us. So maybe I think that many times we don't tell it just because of that, and we shouldn't be doing that. In my experience, they have been very receptive. And in terms of making the video, I thought it was more or less my obligation, because at this point, what do I have to lose? What if my, I don't know, if my boss or my
Right.
someone from my family knows? I mean, it's not my fault what has happened to me. It's not nothing to be ashamed about. And if I can prevent someone else that is thinking about taking finasteride from doing it, I will have done my part in this. And anyway, if we don't speak about it, we are not going to have a cure or research or whatever we are finding about it.
Yeah. Raf, what about for you?
I totally support what Louis said and Damon and Ryan. I reckon that's my obligation. That's probably really the only thing what I can do in the situation. And I was thinking about making my own video when I was hit with PFS in the beginning of 2020. But then when there was a conversation about having this video project with several people, I thought our strengths in numbers really, by and when people start to watch videos where there will be like people different age from different countries talking about the same problem, the same condition, that would actually they will realize that what we're suffering from is actually a true thing. I'm quite happy that I took part. I mean I even send the links to my colleagues and to my relatives, and I'm happy to participate more. It's just to raise awareness. We all people have to kind of hear and see that, because before taking finasteride, I was searching online, and that's how I learned about finasteride. But the old videos which I watched, they all were good. They all were positive, saying like, "Oh my God, they're like a miracle tablet," and there was nothing about side effects. I mean, there was no video about that, and so I hope the more videos appear, the more people will be, yeah, aware and make their own kind of decision if they wanna
Yeah.
carry on or not. And
Well, that's
with
the way,
finasteride, yeah.
like Luis, to your point, like I was so scared about what would people, like what would my close friends, I always found it easier to tell people who I didn't really know what was going on, because like if they if they get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. Like whatever. Like I don't really care. But like your close friends, like I didn't tell any of them for like 7 years. I only told them all when I made my video. Like that was how I told my friends. Was I sent them my video and I was like, just watch this. And I think it really helped from that perspective, because when you're scripting it out and whatever, and you're thinking about what to say, like you just say it better than you could face to face. So um, what would you all say about the importance of speaking publicly? I know you sort of touched on it there, that it's kind of feel as though it's your duty to do so. What do you have to lose? But if the other patients
I
watching
think
this, how
the more
important do you
people
think
that
it is about
speak,
speaking
sorry,
publicly?
Well, it's yeah, carry
Raf?
on, Ryan. Come
no,
on.
go on, sorry.
Oh no, no, yeah. As I already said, that we have to raise the awareness, and that's it's really we're just doing the first steps. So yeah, and I'm quite very glad that I'm one of the first people who is actually um, telling about this, and hopefully I put off somebody from taking finasteride, so save somebody's life, you know. So that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Ryan, you were
that's
going to
my
say
opinion.
something?
Sorry for jumping in there earlier. Um, I mean, it's so important because the more that speak out, the more this will get understood, and awareness will be there. While it remains a few, I don't think it'll get the
Yeah,
impetus that it deserves. And I do understand that. I think the fear from a lot of guys is that they're still in the work environment, they're in relationships or whatever, and they feel that could have a negative impact on their lives, and peer and colleagues at work might view them differently. So I do think the stigmatism holds people back, and then all the emotional sides that it brings as well, and the ability to sit in front of a camera and talk about it, and the knowledge that it's going to be viewed by many, and how it might be perceived can hold people back. But I think unless we speak out um, individually, collectively, and there's a growing number of men, we won't get that it won't get the acknowledgement that it deserves. And as I said, if there's 8,000 guys on the Propecia forum that have disclosed off-label sites, how many is that actually? Because it took me years to find out the cause myself. So this is on a
Mm,
much wider scale. So people need to speak out about it. They really do. And us this group here all feel better for it anyway. So it's a no-brainer, really.
yeah, absolutely. I know I feel a lot better from speaking publicly. Like I feel like I don't want to sound cliche or corny or anything, but kind of like I've done my duty, you know. And it does make you feel a lot better about the whole situation, at least momentarily, you know. It's, you know, you've
Yeah.
contributed something.
yeah, its life is
Damon,
not wasted really. So
what would you say about speaking publicly?
Man, it's the hardest thing to do, but you have to do it. Um, but you know, you guys said it best in your personal stories is that this can literally happen to anybody. It can happen to your brother, your dad, your husband, friend. I mean, it can happen to anybody, and yet there's no way of knowing how you're going to react when you take this drug. You can be completely fine,
Mm,
or it can completely ruin your life overnight. Um, I've always joked about it. You know, it's a dark humor, but you would be better off than taking
Yeah,
finasteride.
I agree.
Um, do whatever, just don't take finasteride. Your body will bounce back. With this, for some reason, sometimes it doesn't. I took one pill. I took one pill 2.5 years ago, and nothing has gotten better. But speaking out publicly, you know, it may be the difference of saving somebody's life. There are many documented suicides that are linked with this, and I did skim YouTube prior to taking the drug, like I talked about, and I saw positive things about doctors and saying it was okay to take. I saw one or two personal PFS stories. There's it's not out there, and we're trying to change that. But anybody who's watching this and struggling, you're not alone. And please speak up and share your story because it may be the difference
yep.
we need.
Luis?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of good reasons to speak up. I mean, you just have to find yours. First, you can help others by speaking up, saving someone from taking the med. Second, do it as self therapy if you want, because at least in my case, I feel much more freed after putting everything in a video and telling people all around the world or telling my close friends. I felt much better with myself and it helped me to accept the condition and to deal with it.
But I think a lot of people don't understand as well is, you know, patients talk about we need research, and you know we need a cure, and like you don't get research unless a lot of people speak publicly about what's going on. And I know it is very stigmatizing, but it is one of the most important reasons to speak is, all those experiences we spoke about with clinicians, they become less frequent because, this content gets picked up and people see it and they realize they at least accept that it's a possibility. And two is, when we're trying to talk to a researcher about what's going on, these stories are, they not only show what, human impact this has had on people, it shows them, hey, it's not just sexual symptoms. It's not just, a very small number of people. Yeah, or depression. It's like, muscle wastage. It's all these neurological symptoms. It's a much bigger picture. So just before we wrap up, I want to talk about like what gives you guys hope, and why you keep going. So what gives you hope, and then two, I guess, what are your hopes for the future of our condition? Luis, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, to be honest, I want to focus on the positive. I always try that. But if you ask me what is my hope, I don't have much hope. I'm just trying to focus to accept what is happening to me. What I can do is try to live with it and do as much as I can to raise awareness, finance research if I can, telling my story to prevent others from falling into the same mistake. And that's my view.
Yeah. Ref?
Well, I totally agree with what Louis said, and what also gives me hope that through awareness, maybe more professionals will be engaged, and I don't know, there will be some kind of solution in the future. And so at least to recognize our problem, and
Damon, what about for you?
Uh, my main hope is one day to go back to normal, for my skin to go back to normal, body odor, hair texture, muscle, response to exercise, cognition, all of it, to go back to what I remember it being. Um, that's the main hope. The longer I'm in this, the further I get away from that. You kind of have to adapt to like a new normal. I said it earlier. It's like having to reinvent yourself. Um, but no, I mean the main hope is eventually we narrow down what exactly this condition is, because I don't. We haven't really discussed it in this session, but to be clear for any outside listeners, this condition varies dramatically among people affected with it. I mean, people that get just cognitive issues, people that get just physical issues, they get you know, people who go from a very high functioning level to virtually disabled in a very short amount of time. So it is essential to have research to really see what this drug does, because at the end of the day, we know it does. You can Google and see what it does, but we don't really know, what it does in the body to keep affecting us. But my hope is eventually we figure it out, and we don't have to have any more conversations like this at some point. That some young guy doesn't come through and have his life ruined because his hair was thinning or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. It's
Mm.
sickening.
Yeah. Ryan, we'll finish with you.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, individually, my hope is that at some point this plateaus, because I just continue to deteriorate with time. But outside of myself, that will get recognition, and on what Damon was saying there, that the disease actually becomes understood and the mechanisms, what actually causes it, and once that's understood, then you can start building the treatment. But I find it's a modern day tragedy that this is going on, and one day I see outside the other side that this is accepted, understood, and we are recognised for what we're being put through, really, which is needless. Um, so a bit of a wrapper around my hope and expectations, but as well as being a realist, I'm someone that believes that good things come always, no matter what the situation. So I do hang on to the hope that what I've asked for there, that is realised one day for us all.
Absolutely. So for me, I think what keeps me going is I still get little glimpses of like what life was like before, and like little moments, and I remember what, you know, I remember what, you know, connecting with someone properly felt like, or, you know, I remember the joy that I used to get out of, you know, things like sport or, you know, exercise, like Damon said. And, you know, I think there's so many modern medicine, even though it can be quite archaic in some ways, as we've experienced, I think in terms of research, it can go quite quickly if things go well. So, you know, what keeps me going is doing this, working with PFS Network, telling all these stories, start to build momentum over the next couple of years, and who knows what the future looks like, because like you said, Ryan, there's thousands of men who've been on Propecia Help over the years. If every single one of them told a story, imagine how different things could be. So that's what keeps me going, and that's what gives me hope. All right, guys. Well, thank you all very much for your time. I know, you know, it's very difficult to talk about, and I know you're all suffering in different ways. So we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch, for giving us visibility.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Thank you so
Well said.
much. And
Absolutely.
thank y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching today's episode. Please like this video, and if you're new to our channel, subscribe and check out our other content, and stay tuned as we'll be releasing lots of new content over the coming months. You can also find us at our website, pfsnetwork.org, or on Twitter @pfsnetwork. If you are a PFS patient or the loved one of a PFS patient, please consider donating generously to upcoming scientific research. You can learn more about our latest study and donate by heading over to our website using the link in our description below. Thanks for watching, and take care.